I'm sure that's what the note said.
Greg Love is a teacher at Scales Elementary. If you were to pass his class on any typical day, you would see his students reading and writing, solving math equations, and learning about history. You'd notice that these students are focused on their academics just like any other classroom in Murfreesboro City Schools. If you were to meet Mr. Love's students, you would find them very respectful with a positive outlook. So what's so special about Mr. Love's classroom, you might ask? Well, because Greg's class is a behavior intervention classroom, a classroom designed for students who have had behavioral concerns in school. Some have lost faith in these students, but fortunately, Greg and the Murfreesboro City School System has not. They believe in the academic potential for these students and have had the positive test results to back it up. This month on City School News, we find out about the Behavior Intervention Program and how Murfreesboro City Schools is mentoring our youth. Welcome back. We're here with Greg Love, Behavior Intervention Teacher at Scales Elementary. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's start off and kind of talk about your title, Behavior Intervention. Tell us, what is this? What kind of position, and what does this entail?
It's part of the special ed department in Murfreesboro City, and behavior intervention serves a very specific population of students who have identified behavior problems. A lot of children, a lot of people might say that a lot of kids have behavior problems, but our children specifically have been diagnosed with some sort of learning disability. They receive special ed services, and one of those services is behavior intervention. There's a very long process you have to go through. Not every student is eligible to receive behavior intervention services. Just make a professional decision on whether a child is, ready for those kind of services. It's a pretty intense program.
So this month, Greg, we're talking about engaging at-risk students, and this deals with your job with the city schools. Is there like a certain quality or certain characteristic of your typical student? Is there a typical student?
No, there's. The children that we serve, and I say we because there are two behavior intervention teachers. I serve grades 3 through 6, and the other gentleman, Kevin Goddard, he serves kindergarten through 2nd grade. The children that we serve have a very wide range of difficulties in school.
I know that's tough because there really isn't a typical student. Can you name maybe an example of somebody who might qualify for this type of program? I guess the easiest one would be to say if there was a student who was already receiving special ed services, and part of their difficulty was, say, like an emotional or behavioral disturbance that had been diagnosed and treated or worked with in the past. Children whose behavior greatly interferes with their academic progress. What is a typical day like?
Typical day in my class is a really good time. We have a lot of fun. We try to get in as many academics as we possibly can. We try to get with the basics. Your reading, spelling, writing, math, social studies, science, and all that. But in my class, we also do PT, physical training. We run a lot. We do a lot of calisthenics and yoga. try to work through a lot of that aggression and energy that our kids have. My children tend to be very hyperactive, more so than the typical child. They have a lot of energy that has to get worked out somehow. And in the past, before they came into the behavior program, or maybe because the behaviors that got in place in the behavior program were antisocial behaviors, because they just had no outlet for this energy that they had. And so we just work it out of them by running or calisthenics or whatever. And
I was
it's a basic program.
After they do get some of that energy out, is it more like a traditional? Absolutely,
they're more able to focus. Between lessons, I might give my kids 30 seconds to just get up and be as wild as they want to be. Spin around in circles or do jumping jacks or just run around or do whatever they want to do for about 30 seconds. And then they focus again and they go back to doing whatever they had to be doing. And they're able to do that.
Now, I know many children have behavioral concerns, but what point are they sent to your classroom?
Well, like I said, it's very important that they are first served under special ed. Once they've done that, you have to do, and I hate to use a lot of acronyms and a lot of professional jargon, but you have to have a functional behavior analysis, which is a document, a very long document to complete, that says, okay, this is what the behavior is that this child is doing. Why does the child do it? What is the function behind it? What are they getting from it? And then once you do that, you have to document how many times the child does it over a span of time. And then once you've done that, you have to do another document called a behavior intervention plan. And then the general ed teachers and the regular special ed teachers in the schools will try to work through that behavior intervention plan, because coming to the behavior intervention classroom is the most restrictive environment in Murfreesboro City school system, or in most school systems.
Restrictive.
Every child wants to be or should be in the least restrictive environment, which is a general ed regular classroom in a regular public school. My classroom and the behavior intervention classrooms are isolated classrooms away from the general population of children, and so it is a more restrictive environment. They don't have a lot of the same freedoms and liberties that general education students will have.
Now, you said there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of process.
Right.
Do they just want to make sure that the people who are placed in the programs are properly placed? Is that the whole reason behind that?
Yes, and they want to make sure that you're not just dumping children into this program. They want to make sure that the kids who are there really need it. Because like I said, it's a very intense program, and we try to get kids in, work through their behaviors, and see what it is that's really causing these behaviors, get to the bottom of it, get to the root cause, and then work them back into the general population from where they came. And like in my classroom, I have 2 women from the guidance center that counsel the children daily, and I have a wonderful EA who works with the children. So in my classroom, there's 4 adults at all times working with these kids.
Did you say your job's challenging?
Absolutely, but it's a really great time.
Is that almost part of the reason you like it?
Oh yeah, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. And I've done a whole bunch of different stuff, but nothing compares to what I do now.
What are some of the challenges?
Oh man, you really do need a whole lot of patience. And sometimes it kind of can wear thin. The children are not the same day to day. I might have the same 9 kids every day, but they're not the same kids from day to day to day, because they're always growing and they're constantly changing. And something that might have set them off yesterday no longer bothers them, but then there's a whole other set of issues that happen day to day. And I think that's the biggest challenge right there, is dealing with the kids day to day and not knowing what's going to happen.
So what's the reward for you?
The reward is watching the growth. I mean, they're so great. The kids are really, really wonderful. And when you see a kid, like my favorite part is getting a new student. And when I see this new student come in, and they're typically pretty wild, and they're used to getting their way, and they're used to being in control of a classroom, even at 4th or 5th or 6th grade, and then coming in and working through whatever issues they might have and working through their behaviors and getting them to a point where they're even keeled and you can just watch them function again in a regular classroom.
Since this is kind of an alternative to traditional learning, I'm sure people outside of the program have various opinions about what you do, what the students are like. What are some of those misconceptions?
I'm really glad you asked that, because most of those misconceptions are very negative, that either I'm too strict or that I'm not doing what I should be doing as a regular teacher. Because what I do, the behavior methods are different. We have a lot more leeway with the children. But also a lot of people think that our kids just are bad kids or troubled kids and they come from bad homes, and that's not true at all. Our kids just have more difficulties, and they have greater difficulties dealing with their problems than most children do. And I think that's the largest misconception, is that our kids are bad, and they're not. They're really, really great kids. I think they're the best kids in the world.
Are you seeing results as time goes on?
Oh yes, I see results daily and hourly. And you know, from some of my kids, it might be real small changes, but whatever it is, we celebrate whatever change that there is. We just encourage them to grow, and it's real exciting.
And those results, have they changed some of the previous misconceptions that people have had?
Oh yes, definitely. And I love being at Scales because we have teachers from all over the system who know a lot of the kids that I have from the different schools, because my students come from all over the Murfreesboro City School system, and because the behavior program is housed at Scales. And so some of my students have a past or a history with some of the teachers there at Scales, and the teachers have noticed growth in my students, and it's really, really nice when those teachers come to me and say, well, I knew this child X number of years ago, and whatever you've done with them has just been wonderful.
As parents, as you said earlier, a lot of parents have children that do have behavior problems. You know, the real question with your program, are they the right children? What would you say to the parents who are concerned about their child, but they want to make sure that they're in the right place? What do they need to do to find out, is this the right program for them?
Gosh, that's a tough question.
Are there steps they can take with your school? Or?
Well, I would definitely, I wouldn't say with the school, I would say with whatever school they're in. Because like I said, you know, our kids come from all over the system. I would say the first thing to do would be to, you know, just to talk with the child, and then maybe take the child to like an outside counselor or something of that nature. A lot of the children may be able to work through a lot of their behavioral issues outside of school, or just with their parents, just by talking with their parents. And that could be a large part of it. And they might just have problems academically that is causing them to act out, or to not, maybe just to misbehave in class. If they're just not understanding something, they might just have the difficulties there, and that might cause them to act out.
I've got to ask, what happens to these students once they leave your classroom in middle school and high school? Are there similar programs within the system they can go to?
Well, there are.
The future system, I should say.
Now, what we try to do is, or what any behavior teacher tries to do, is to accept a child into the program and work through that child's behavior issues and cycle them out of the program as quickly as possible. We're not trying to push them out, we're just trying to work them out. And there are other behavior programs, but we don't try to graduate kids from one behavior program into the next one. But Rutherford County and Davidson County each have behavior programs in middle schools and high schools. Now in my program, or in Murfreesboro City program, excuse me, we try to get those kids out into the general population as quickly as we can.
Well, Greg, it's certainly great to hear that the city school system is offering this to those children, and we're glad you came on the show to kind of let us know a little bit more about what this program actually is.
I appreciate your time and your interest.